Hi, everybody. I'm thankful for my Savior Jesus, who continues to help me experience victory with my codependent behaviors that stem out of my fears, false beliefs, and negative thoughts. And my name is Tanya.
Hey, Tanya.
Hi, everybody. Well, tonight's lesson is the giving lesson, and it's an important step in our recoveries. And some of you might think when you hear the word giving, oh, this is going to be about financially, and she's going to do a financial focus or something. But that isn't the focus of tonight's lesson. So I want to let you know that right now up front. Actually, tonight's focus is on how we give back to God by telling others what He's done for us through this program. And when we do that, we benefit in a big way when we do this, and others benefit too. Now, the benefit we experience when we tell others about the changes we've made in overcoming our addictions and compulsive behaviors is an opportunity to remind ourselves of what we're supposed to be doing here in our recoveries. Because the truth is, if we're honest with ourselves, we are forgetful people. I mean, just take a look at what happened to poor old Moses. You know, he does the 7 plagues. All the Israelites live through that. He gets them, parts the Red Sea. They get to walk through it. They're led by a pillar of fire at night. They wake up to manna on the ground in the morning. I mean, and what happened? They ended up abandoning God for their idols. They forgot what God has done for them. And that's why this is an important part of our recovery about giving back and remembering what we're supposed to be doing, is so we can help others and remember what we're supposed to be doing to continue to work our recoveries of what we're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, we can kind of look like this guy who decided to use a snake to protect his bike. I know it's kind of a creepy picture, and it's the creepiest one, I promise, for tonight. But he used that instead of a chain, right? Instead of a bike chain. And sometimes our new addictions and compulsive behaviors, you know, if we don't, so let me back up a little bit first. So if we forget, like the Israelites did, about what our behaviors are and what we're supposed to be doing to continue to work our recoveries, we can fall back into old familiar coping behaviors, right? We can fall back into our old addictions and compulsive behaviors. Or sometimes we decide to go for a new one. We'll go for a new addiction or a new compulsive behavior. And so now back to the guy with the creepy snake up here on his bike. Instead of using a chain, you know, at first our new addiction or compulsive behavior can seem like a good idea. We may think that it may show we have things under control, or no one can hurt us now, or we're protected from having problems. But eventually, our misery is going to show back up. And when the pain gets so great, we're going to realize that we have stopped doing what we've learned. But hopefully, that will be a trigger for us to get back on track. So all I got to say is don't be like the snake guy here, and don't trade victories and progress for new addictions and compulsive behaviors. We have to be on guard for that. So let's begin tonight by diving into our principle and step for tonight's lesson. If you didn't get a handout there on the back table, please feel free to run back there and grab one if you don't have one already. And tonight's lesson ties to Principle 8 and says, yield myself to God to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and by my words. Happy are those who are persecuted because they do what God requires. Matthew 5:10. You know, and sometimes when I read that beatitude, I think about some people don't like it when we change. Some people don't like the new us because they can't get us to do what the old us used to do for them. So sometimes we're persecuted for changing for the better of how God wants us to be. And we should know that that is what brings us happiness. That's what brings us freedom. And so I love this beatitude. Step 12, so moving on. So having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently, but watch out for yourselves, or you may also be tempted. Galatians 6:1. And the reason for the giving lesson is Matthew 10:8. Freely you have received, so God asks us to freely give. So we're going to jump into tonight's acronym for give, and the first letter in the acronym is G, for God, the first giver. So before we look at us giving, we need to look at the ultimate example of giving, which is God. He gave us his son, Jesus. He gave him to us freely. He was a great gift, an amazing gift, and honestly, a gift we could never match. And unfortunately, when we have learned to live with so many hurts, habits, and hangups that have piled up over the years, they will get in the way and they will hinder us giving back to God unless we're working our recovery. And thankfully, God's gift to us did not end with Jesus, But he continues to say he will give us what we need to overcome our addictions and compulsive behaviors. 1 Peter 4:10 says, he who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not graciously give us all things? God is the source of all we need to change, but we have to choose it, we have to implement it, and then we need to share about God's goodness with others. The next letter in our acronym is I, which means I becomes we when we give. Did you ever notice that none of the steps or principles begin with the word I? As a matter of fact, the very first word in step 1 is we. We admitted we were powerless over our addictions and compulsive behaviors and that our lives have become unmanageable. As a matter of fact, the word we appears in the 12 steps 14 times. This road is not meant to be traveled alone. We need each other, and we need to tell others about our journey. Just like Roger shared when he was up here about the importance, he could not have maintained his recovery without reaching out to his accountability partners when he was going through a tough time. That's so important. We need each other. Matthew 22:37-39 tells us to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. This is your first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. When we share about what we're going through in here, when we share about the progress we're making, when we share about the victories we're experiencing with others, that's how we actively practice loving our neighbor. And that's also why after you completed your first 12 step and have done your testimony, you should be taking the CR leadership class. You should get trained so you can become a sponsor, so you can help lead or co-lead the next 12 step. Because that is how we can help to give back to others while also having accountability to keep working our recoveries for ourselves. God's word also reminds us what can happen if we attempt to live life in our own power by doing things on our own again. In Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9-12, it says, two are better off than one because together they can work more effectively. If one of them falls down, the other can help them up. But if someone is alone, there is no one to help them. So together, this verse reminds me, we can accomplish more. We can go further in our recoveries. We can make more progress, find freedom, healing, and hope. The next letter in our acronym tonight is V for victories. And there was a lot of victories being shared up here tonight. So I loved hearing that. And thank you for sharing your victories. Just remember 1 minute, around 1 minute or less, our digger's going to come up here and get you. But anyhow, the longer we work our victories, we work our recovery, the more victories we're going to have. Having victories is going to help to grow our confidence. It's going to help us to get better identifying our triggers, how to navigate new challenges, stresses, relational struggles, and problems. We also will begin to see our hurts, habits, and hangups in a new way. When we recognize there's a problem we have to face, instead of going into the panic mode or into the thinking mode of, oh no, not again, or woe is me, or why God, why? Instead, we learn to begin to see our struggles as an opportunity to grow and learn. We gain a different perspective of how to view difficult times in our life. Now, instead of being filled with panic or fear, we can ask God, what can you teach me through this experience? How can I deal with this crisis differently? Our messes and tests become opportunities to grow if we're willing to face the truth and make the hard choices. And even when we fail, that is an opportunity to learn and grow. We can ask ourselves, what should I do differently next time? Most of you know that the reason I began coming to CR 10 years ago is because of our youngest daughter who struggles with a mental illness of schizophrenia since 7th grade. When she got into high school, I began taking her to a psychiatrist for about 3 years. I kept on thinking during that time, this was pre-CR, during those 3 years, pre-CR, I kept thinking that I could fix her and rescue her from her poor choices. But it wasn't until that 3rd year of taking her to the psychiatrist until they told me to stop bringing her. They said until she wanted help and was willing to take her medication, that there was nothing they could do for her. And that was when I hit bottom. Looking back, I can now see how taking her was probably more for me than her. And the truth was, I was in denial because I was not ready to accept the truth that I couldn't change how her mental illness was running her life. I felt completely hopeless that day when I finally realized I couldn't change her, and the only person I could change was me and how I was dealing with it. And that's when I decided to try CR. And by the way, let me save you some time and heartache. Attempting to control and fix and rescue others doesn't work. It only causes you much misery and pain. I tried it with her. I tried it with Dave when he went through cancer and was recovering from his cancer surgeries, and it doesn't work. So if I can encourage you to avoid that, that's my encouragement tonight. One of my encouragements for tonight. Anyway, long story short, let me get back to my story. She moved out when she turned 18, and she never got help, and she never went on meds. And for years now, I felt like a bystander in her life as I've watched her mental illness take her down one downward spiral after another. The latest one actually happened this last Wednesday of last week, but I didn't find out until this past weekend that she is in jail right now, and she's 26. Actually, she was arrested twice in this past month. Her mental illness is at a new peak. Her delusions are the worst I think I've ever seen in her life so far. It makes me really sad when I think about her being in this place. Initially, my first instinct was to think about what I could do. In the past, I would want to run up there, attempt to fix and rescue her from the problems she created. But since I've been working my recovery here for the last 10 years in CR, I've learned that rescuing and fixing only enables her to continue to make more poor choices. Saving her from the pain of her consequences doesn't give her any motivation to want to change. Pain, in which I think a lot of us have experienced in this room, can be a powerful motivator that drives us here. Also helps us to make the decision that we need to come to work on ourselves and to work on what we need to face and deal with. But if others are busy rescuing, fixing, and enabling us, we may lose our motivation to do what we really need to in order to change the cycle of our poor choices. I'm thankful for all that I've learned over the past 10 years in CR, so I can still face the truth that my daughter's not well, and I know better now what I can and cannot do. And when new incidents happen like this recent one, my heart grieves again. For the loss, for not having a normal life. My anger gets stirred over everything the mental illness steals from her mind. But by working through these feelings and owning them is how God helps me to stay living in the truth and accept the things I cannot change about her life. And it's true that he gives me the power to not run in and try to fix or rescue her anymore. And he gives me hope that one day she can change and do what she needs to so she can have a reasonably happy life. To help me work on my codependency and untangle my thoughts so I don't fall back into my old fixing, controlling, and rescuing ways, I've learned to stop and ask myself, is there something I can do or am willing to do that would not fix or rescue her? And I did that again this weekend when I found out where she was. And after praying about it, I decided that the only thing I could do was call the county where she was currently being detained. I asked them if they had a public defender that handled people who were arrested with mental illnesses, and I found out that they do. And I asked how I could help to get her assigned that specific public defender. And they told me I could write a letter to the judge, and because the judge would be the one assigning it. And so that's what I decided I can do. And my hope is that if she gets the right public defender, that he might be able to help her get mandatory probation, which would also require mandatory rehab and taking a regimen of medications for her condition. Now, I have no control over if that will happen. I don't know if she'll be cooperative. That is up to her. But I do feel that is the part of what I could do, and the rest I just have to surrender and give to the Lord. So why am I telling you this long story? Because I'm not telling you to give your sympathy, but I will accept any of your prayers for her. But I tell you about this struggle because this is a huge victory for me. To not fall into my old ways of coping and dealing with her. I feel like God has finally broken those chains of codependent living that I've been kept in. Another reason I tell you is because I believe in the value, importance of sharing about our struggles. I hope that tonight that someone will be encouraged that struggles with codependency like me. And I hope to encourage all of you to be strong, to take courage, to live in truth, to face the curveballs that life throws at you instead of running, medicating, stuffing, or hiding from them. Living in truth is not the easiest way to live, but it is the most free. And even though I'm very sad about the place my daughter is in, I have peace because I know I can't control or fix her illness. And knowing this and believing this helps me to stay rooted in the truth and out of denial. And if we're living in truth, we can keep working our recovery, and then we can wait and watch to see what God does in us and through us. I know God will not waste the pain of what I'm going through or feel inside for her. And I know he will use it to help others if I'm willing to talk about it. I also know when I share about what God is showing me, I'm living out 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4, which says, give thanks to God, to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the merciful Father, the God from whom all help comes. He helps us in all our troubles so that we are able to help others who have all kinds of troubles, using the same help that we ourselves have received from God. So, our victories are an encouragement. And even though I'm emotionally raw, I am excited that I have been able to see where she's at and be able to live with myself with her mental illness. And then the last letter in our acronym tonight is E, for encouragement. And one of the most encouraging things for me when I very first came to CR was to discover I was not the only messed up person in the room. It was and still is super encouraging to me to hear others come up here and confess your messes, your trials, and tests that you're facing. It's encouraging for me to know that I'm not alone and that there's a safe place to come and talk about it. But I have struggled with the lie for many years of my life, even here in CR when I first started coming, that my pain had no value and my story couldn't be used to help encourage others. And these are part of the lies and false beliefs from my codependency that God has been helping me undo for quite a while now. And through my time here, he has shown me over and over how they are lies. I was reminded not that long ago when I was doing a newcomers class. It was just me and a gal in there, and I was sharing with her about how I came to CR due to my struggles with my youngest daughter that I shared about tonight. And while I was sharing my story, I'm having this conversation in my head. And my conversation was, Tanya, keep it short. Tanya, she doesn't care. Tanya, she's not going to be able to relate. Tanya, she doesn't need all the details. You're boring her. So I'm telling myself this, but I'm telling her my story. And so I finished up my story quickly. I finished up the class with her. And then I said, so do you have any questions? Or any questions I can answer about the program? And she goes, no, you answered everything. And then she goes, but I want to tell you, your story really helped me tonight. Your past hurts of what you've been through spoke to me and touched me because she was dealing with family members going through the same thing. We never know when we're talking to somebody or we feel led to share with somebody what they're going through, but it might be the exact thing that they need to hear. We got to stop listening to the lies that it doesn't have value, it doesn't have meaning, that it may not help somebody. Last week, when Janine shared her testimony, she mentioned she came to CR after hearing me share my CR testimony in church on Sunday morning. And we never know when what we have to share can impact somebody and help somebody else. We just have to be open and willing to share about what God's doing and what we've been working on. And I want you guys to know, all of you in this room have the same ability to encourage somebody else through what God is doing in your life. And if you're open and willing to talk about it, don't listen to the lies. Remember, God has delivered you. Be open to telling others about it because it's one of the biggest ways we give back here at CR. And so remember, when we share our stories, it's to help us remember about the steps we've implemented, the new ways we're living and coping with our life. That's how we benefit and others benefit because they get to be encouraged. When you guys come up here and get chips tonight, sharing about your victories. You don't know how many people in this room you might have encouraged because of what you shared about what you're experiencing. And when you come up here to surrender something new, or you come up here because you slipped and you fell and you relapsed and you're starting over, you never know who you might be encouraging in this room. So I just want to keep on encouraging. That's why going to share groups is important, because that's another place we can encourage others who might be hearing what we're saying, and it might be what they needed to hear that night. So keep coming back. Be sure to go to share groups. And I appreciate the fact that you guys continue to demonstrate 1 John 3:18 to me and in this program. And it says, "My children, love must not be a matter of words or talk. It must be genuine and show itself in action." I just want to thank you guys for being a group putting your love into action by giving to this ministry and to others here. I couldn't work my recovery without you. And I appreciate you and your willingness to come here and share with all of us. I added some questions to the back or inside of your outline tonight. If you would like to use that in your share groups, you can. It's really just to encourage you to maybe share a victory that you've been experiencing, or something positive that you've seen God do in your life recently, to maybe help encourage each other in your groups tonight. And with that, let's go ahead and stand and say our serenity prayer so we can get to our share groups.